Interesting. Geoffery,
yes.
Your take, first of all, how do you get involved in this? And then you've written a couple of pieces regarding things that have happened at some of the meetings, and then, of course, things that are happening in regards to policing in the Bronx.
Yes. So I run a blog called theblinker.com, and we focus on a lot of injustices and opportunities happening around the city, trying to really just change up how local news is discussed. And I had come across Ephraim when he had spoken at the CCRB meeting earlier. I had seen him in a story and gotten in contact with him, and he had told me about this initiative that he was doing to basically try to bring in more CCRB data into the discussions in these community meetings. And knowing how important that is to a lot of these communities, because you do easily get access to the crime stats data, but access to the CCRB data, which is crucial because it basically gives you a comparison as crime is going down, what is happening with misconduct amongst the police officers. Are they using the right tactics, and at what cost to the community is crime going down, which is a very crucial thing to ask and is not too often asked when we say, how did crime go down in New York City throughout the 90s into the 2000s? So I had gotten in contact with Ephraim. He had told me about some of the meetings that were happening, and the 4-7 meeting was the first one that I had went to, and it was, to be honest, how textbook it was compared to what you would expect when you're trying to get a community on your side or trying to keep a community on your side. It was really amazing, and it fits in a lot with the NYPD's pattern that at least I've noticed in my reporting experience. You know, it's like you said, a lot of denial and a lot of reframing of stories and the situation. The problem in this scenario, though, is that communities have very few options and avenues to get their voice into what's happening, and we need to utilize them as much as possible. And we need to utilize them as much as possible, because if we don't get that voice from the community involved, then there's very few tools available for accountability across with these officers.
Geoffery was also at the 4-3 precinct, and what I found interesting in reading his piece today was that the Deputy Inspector Green told me the same thing in October that he told Geoffery in November. Because I asked him, I said, why is it that we're getting a lot of resistance from other commanders with this complaint data, and you're readily providing it in great detail with a similar breakdown to the crime stats, similar fashion? And he attributed it to inexperienced commanders at other precincts. And also, he volunteered that it's the officers under 5 years who generate the most amount of abuse complaints because their skin is not thick enough.
Yeah.
Now, I found that interesting because his colleagues, we're not talking about individuals with no experience. Commander Hoffman at the 5-2 precinct is 24 years in service. She is a deputy inspector. Here's a woman making almost $200,000 a year and can't have a readily transparent commitment towards trust and a relationship with the community. She's only been at the 5-2 for a year now. You have Stevenson at the 4-7 as a deputy inspector. Here's another fellow on a par with Russell Green at the 4-3 precinct.
Now, along with that, the thing that I think is most telling is that policing is handled differently in different communities.
Absolutely.
That if you go to Central Park, you know, they're not writing summons for everybody, you know, with open containers or doing whatever they're doing in Central Park. They're not going to do that.
Right.
Okay? But if, in fact, you're going to go to St. Mary's, as you said, or you're going to go to Haffen Park in the Bronx or whatever, you can get arrested or written up for being in the park after dark.
Yes.
All
Or
right?
even in the daylight.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many things. But then you look at it and you say, well, is this the same way that policing is actually done in Central Park? And the answer is absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
And, you know, it speaks to what you just brought up, speaks entirely to the idea that, or the problem that we face here, that when communities complain that they have crime problems, a lot of times the immediate reaction is, let's bring in more police officers, more heavy presence, which, one, is not always the tactic they take in other communities, and two, a lot of these problems, when you trace them to their root, are embedded in economic and socioeconomic issues that the communities have. When we look at the crime rates going down in the 90s across the city, we also notice that a lot of these communities improved economically. When you give people opportunities to work, when you give them proper education, and you connected it. When you said that this is all connected, it is entirely connected. And the problem is, if our solution to crime, or our solution to even the small amount of crime that we have right now, because as you implied, the crime rates in these neighborhoods are relatively very low compared to where they were in the 90s.
Yes.
If our solution to this minute amount of crime is to bring in more officers, we're going to quickly realize that the marginal benefit of each of these officers is going to be minimal. What needs to happen in these communities is socioeconomic improvement. You need to care about the people, not bring in more cops.
See, what you raise is the contradiction. You know, police officers think that they're around to prevent crime. And they're not.
They're not.
They're around to control crime. I mean, that's what it is. I say, you can't prevent crime. That's social issues. The social issues that we talk about are the things that can prevent crime.
Yes,
exactly.
All right. So the police can't do that. You know, that's not in your purview as a police officer. You can't give anybody a job. You can't give anybody an education. You can't do any of the kinds of things that can really make a difference. So you're there to control this particular community. WBAI, you're in the air. Good evening.
Yes, I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I feel that you're not understanding the police officer's point of view. As you mentioned of overtime, it's very cynical, but, you know, the reality is that, you know, the union is against, you know, the abandonment of the stop and frisk. And it's understandable that you're taking money out of people's pockets. I mean, we don't want to see a reduction in police force like in the late 90s. This is about numbers. It's not about people, you know? There's a certain amount of activity that a police officer is mandated to, you know, it's a workload. It's a production, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, we're very aware of the idea of police productivity. But you have to remember
and
that
that's taking away money and jobs. You're talking about jobs. Listen, if they stop the stop and frisk, there's going to be a reduction in production activity, okay? And, you know, the police force have to be kept busy somehow. And unfortunately, you know, you're taking away money and food from the table of police officers. And you have to consider that. We don't want to have a situation where, you know, I think you're missing the point. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, we understand, and the Where We Live crew is coming in now, so we're not going to be able to really address that. But just real quickly.
Well, this gentleman just suggested that the police department is an assembly line for production in the criminalization of our communities. And clearly, we don't support the police department serving us in that manner.
And, you know, we understand that there is definitely a jobs situation this to be considered, but what we also have to consider is are we building jobs on things that are productive towards our society, or are we building jobs on the decline of certain sections of our community? And if it's the latter, we really need to reconsider where our priorities are. They should be about lives, not about money generated through those destructive means.
They can always go back to school and get another degree.
Or, hey, you know, after 20 years, right, they can go ahead and get another job, which is, of course, what many of them do, 20 and out.